rest are is important, and they're identical. When I don't see them,
Even in this bout of recovery, you get to real stories, real recovery. I am Kat, and I'm on the road of recovery.
So my name is Gary Baddeley. I'm a person in long-term recovery. I've been clean and sober about 7.5 years. The last time that I used was June 13th, 2018.
Well, thanks for joining us. Could you start off by sharing a bit about your childhood? What was life like growing up?
So in my childhood, life growing up was a little bit rocky and strange. My dad was a member of like a criminal motorcycle gang. Him and my mom split up early, and then she got with my stepdad. He was a drug dealer. He sold crack cocaine and had a pretend construction company. It was like a front that he would use to get people to give him money up front. And then he'd take the money and do whatever he was doing with the money, and then we'd have to move. So I went to like 16 different schools and never really adjusted. Yeah. It was, so I was like awkward and weird, and I had all that stuff that happened at home that was messing with me. We were really poor, so I had like dirty clothes, and it was just, my childhood was really weird and strange.
Yeah.
And
Was your dad, did you not see your dad anymore?
so for a long time, I would like defend him because I thought he would tell me he was trying to be a dad and she just wouldn't let us see him or whatever. But the truth is he was drinking and doing the things he was doing. And then when he would try to come see us, it would be like 11, 12 o'clock at night. And he'd be hammered and try to show up at the house. And it was rough. So from the time I was 7 until I was 14 years old, I never seen him. And then I kept running away from home because the way my home life was. So my mom finally decided that she was going to let me go live with him. So I didn't see him for 7 years. And then I showed up in his kitchen down in North Carolina.
Oh, my.
And by that time, he had kind of turned his life around.
Okay.
He was still like a weekend drinker, and he drank heavily on the weekends, but he held a job, and he provided and did all the things that like a dad should do outside of that. So when I went down there, things were pretty cool. I thought it was neat to like get to be with my dad. But that's also when I started to like hang around other people, other kids that seemed to be like myself. And I started drinking, smoking weed, doing things like that. And the first time I drank, I remember I didn't feel weird anymore. I felt like I'm really cool and I'm funny and people want to be around me. And I thought I was some type of Casanova, and I was even like hitting on this girl that was beside me, and I ended up throwing up all over her.
Oh, my gosh.
And you'd think when you do something like that, you'd never want to do that ever again.
Right.
But I woke up the next day and I'm like, I'm doing that every weekend for the rest of my life. And by the time I was 16, I was drinking 2 tall cans of like Steel Reserve or Camo malt liquor every day just to get through the day.
Wow. And did your dad, because you're living with him and he's a new parent to you, did your dad ever cautionary tale?
Yeah, so my dad was a little strange. Him and I would get in fights. I'd run away from there as well. And then I ended up getting shipped back up to Ohio. And I was on the streets from the time I was like 15 and a half, 16 years old. I didn't live with any type of family unit. I was living like in the streets of Alliance. I stayed over on Freedom Street, Freedom and Garwood. Back then it was called the Hood. I don't know what it's like now. I don't go down there. But yeah, me and some other kids, we would steal, sell drugs, do whatever we had to do to like support our habits and keep things moving.
So school just
out the window.
Okay.
So I dropped out. I think I was 9th grade when I dropped out of school.
Okay. So if you could continue talking about how your life progressed.
So I was on the streets. I was doing the things I was doing to support my habits and to really support my life too, because I had to eat and have shelter and things like that. And the first time I got introduced to any type of recovery was through a criminal case. There was a store that was over in Alliance called Value City, and they sold like name brand stuff that had like a stitch missing or something, so that was like cheaper. And there were some tennis shoes in there, and I went in to steal the tennis shoes, and a security guard grabbed my arm at the door, and I punched the security guard and ran into the parking lot. And when I ran into the parking lot, 2 police officers were out there, and they clotheslined me and dragged me back in the store. They still took me to jail. I went there, and that's where I first got introduced to like sobriety and what recovery looked like. But I didn't really want it. So it kept getting worse. It ended up being, instead of drinking, now I'm doing other drugs. I'm doing cocaine. I'm doing methamphetamines, pretty much whatever I can get my hands on. And that led to another theft where we stole a car trailer, and I got arrested. and I got put on probation, and I violated probation, and I went to prison. And when I got to prison was the first time I didn't want to use drugs or drink anymore. And not because I was in prison, but because about 6 months into my sentence, I got a letter in the mail. And when I picked the letter up, a picture fell out on my rack. And when I looked into the picture, I looked into the eyes of a baby, and I felt every feeling I've ever felt and every feeling I've never felt all at one time. And in that moment, I knew I was a dad, and I knew that I didn't want to be the way I was anymore. So I started having these fantasies of coming home and marrying his mom. We were going to have a picket fence, and we were going to have, trampolines and all the things. But the thing about alcoholism and substance use disorder is we can want it and we can try to not do it. But if we're not really treating the problem and treating the issue, it's going to crop back up. So within a couple months of being home, I went back to doing what I was doing. I was using primarily methamphetamine. And through that, I learned how to manufacture drugs because I didn't want to steal anymore. And I didn't want to sell drugs. I didn't want to do anything that would put me back in prison. So my bright idea was, if I'm making my own drugs, how could I get in trouble? I got in trouble. They caught me with some chemicals and went to prison for a second time. And by then I had 2 sons. I got out. My friend Jessica picked me up, and we didn't even make it halfway home, and I had her stop at the gas station. I got 2 tall cans of beer, and I was drunk before I made it home. So without going on a huge rant about like how things just kept getting worse and worse, what they did is within weeks I was back to using meth. I was an IV user at this point, and everything just felt empty all the time. I had lots of people around me, but I always felt alone. It was June of 2018. I had a little apartment over in Akron, and I wasn't allowed to see my children. I was, but I would have to see them at my mom's house, and I had to be supervised. All I ever wanted to be was a good dad, and I couldn't do that. So the plan that I was hatching in my mind was, I'm going to try to find a way to get a life insurance policy on myself to where my kids are the beneficiaries of that, and then I'm going to kill myself so that at least then I can at least financially provide. So that's where I was. Facebook Messenger went off. It was a friend of mine asking me if I wanted to go to a meeting. I didn't really want to go, but I was like, yeah, let's go. We went to the meeting. The guy at the front of the room stood up, and he told this story about how he had this crazy childhood, and he went to prison, and that didn't work, and he got baptized, and that didn't work, and he did AA and NA and all them things, and that didn't work, and all the stuff that never worked. And then now, standing in front of me, he's got 7 years sober, and he has his wife, and he has his kids, and he has his own company, and he has a boat. Not that a boat's important, but boats are cool.
Yeah.
And when I heard his story, I got up to thank him, and I said, man, thank you for telling me what sounds like my story, and thank you for your message of hope, and thank you for your message of God, but God can't even help me, man. And I collapsed on the table. I just started bawling and crying, and he came over and gave me his phone number, told me to call him the following day. I did, and he told me to pray and ask God if he would keep me clean. And I was like, man, I don't even know if I believe in this God thing or whatever. And he was like, well, just say, hey, Mike sent me. Will you keep me sober? So I went in my room, and I put my hands in there, and I said, hey, Mike sent me. Will you please keep me sober? And I felt silly, and I sat down, and I didn't think anything changed, but some stuff started moving in a different direction. I ended up walking down the street to where I knew this meeting was at, and I knew my friend had sober houses, and they were combined with like a PHP treatment program or whatever. And I went there, and he told me he could get me in right away. And yeah, I just dug in with both feet. I stayed in sober living for 2 years. I got right involved with recovery meetings and helping other people. Stayed with somebody I knew was accountable to me and accountable to herself. Started getting my kids regularly. Started working in recovery. I started as a BHT, worked as an intake coordinator, worked as a group facilitator. Now I do outreach, and basically it's an admissions person. I help people find treatment programs and get them in. And today, the kids I wasn't allowed to see, I have custody of.
Really?
Yes. So one of them's 19 now. He's on his own and doing really well. One of them's 17, and then I also have a 4-year-old son. No, 5. He just turned 5 in September. That also lives with me. So I have custody of 3 kids. And just a little over 7 years ago, I wasn't even allowed to be in a room with my kids if I didn't have a supervisor.
Right.
And that blows my mind. And I'm still excited for what's going to happen next.
Absolutely. So if you could talk us through rebuilding those relationships with your teenage children, actually being able to develop those relationships, can you talk us through how you built those relationships?
So the kids are very forgiving and very resilient. If you try, they're going to try, for the most part,
Yes.
at least in my experience. And it started with when I was in sober living. I made sure once I had passes and visits, I'd spend the whole visit with my kids. I wouldn't do anything else. I would just be present with them. And then once I got the place with my friend, I started having them overnight, and they come spend the night with me. And little by little, they just wanted to stay with me more and more. And it got to the point where they're like, "Dad, we want to live with you." And I went to my attorney, and I did the paperwork. Their mom didn't really, sadly, she hasn't seen them or talked to them in over 6 years. So the good news is it made it easy for me to get custody of them. But the sad news is, like, my middle son, Tony, the 17-year-old, he's still like very sad and having a hard time coping with why his mom doesn't want to talk to him. And then my youngest son is, so if you're in a treatment program, it's never a good idea to have a romance inside that treatment program. My youngest son, his mom and I met in treatment. We both had the same ideas. We wanted to start a sober house. We wanted to do this and that. I thought that was a meant to be thing, but I didn't really understand her disease. And we tried to work on things for a long time, but she struggled and she's been in and out a lot. And through that's how I ended up with him.
Full custody of your son.
Yeah. So it's a blessing, but at the same time I get saddened by, like, why was I so selfish to not think of these things before I brought the children into the world? But I'm there for him.
Yep.
The youngest one's mom's doing well now. She's present in his life, and I hope she stays that way. And when she isn't, I try to be as supportive as I can. So he does have 2 loving parents, but if you're listening and you're in treatment, don't get in a relationship in there.
Absolutely. That is because it really does it. And this is the thing that working with people in early recovery is, you're still figuring out who you are, let alone trying to figure out that other person, trying to figure out who they are. And neither person is really very healthy at the beginning. So being able to build into a healthy person, then you attract other healthy people. So last 2 questions. Can you talk about feelings that you've been able to experience in recovery that weren't there in active addiction?
Yeah. So I'm able to experience real joy and also real sadness. Like, I'm able to grieve things now. When my youngest son was born, he had a malrotation in his bowel.
Okay.
And it presented at the hospital, and he had like a 60% chance of not living. I remember I was sitting with him, and then I was sitting by him, and I was crying, and I was praying, and I was scared, and all those things. But I was able to sit with him and be there with him and not have to go bury it with some drug or drink. Like, and if he would have had to, pass on, then I could at least say, like, I was actually present with my son. That's aside from feeling all the feelings, to be able to feel feelings without having to run from them is the biggest reward of my recovery.
Beautiful. So we all have, ups and downs throughout our days and whatnot. What is a message of hope, or one of those cliches that really just speaks true to you?
Be still and trust the process. When things seem like they're all out of whack and it's all chaos and things aren't going right, if you can just sit still and not drink, not use, not do the thing that messed you up, there'll be an answer that'll be revealed, and you'll come out on the other side okay.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming out and sharing your story. This has been incredible.
Thank you.